A little boy named Junebug is seen riding his bike through the Glen neighborhood. He is looking for a drug dealer named Fountain. The boy is a paid informant for the dealer. He eventually finds Fountain in a back alley lifting weights, and he has a location on one of his competitors. The two go on a ride and find a low-level drug dealer who Fountain hits with his car. He casually walks up to the dealer, who tells him that his boss, Isaac, is going to come after him for this. Fountain says he doesn't give a cluck. He tells him to find someplace else to sell and leaves wishing him a nice day. The man then calls his boss Isaac, who says that he's on his way. Fountain pays the boy and sends him on his way. Despite the little boy telling him he wants to join him, Fountain tells him to just go home to do his homework. Cut to the convenience store. Fountain grabs a 40-ounce, pays for it, asks for a lottery ticket that says "you lose," and gives some of his drink to an old man named Frog, who says it's in the water, to which Fountain ignores. Fountain, back at his house, and looks at a picture of his younger brother's obituary. He makes some food and knocks on his mother's door to see if she wants some. She replies faintly through the door that she's not hungry. Disappointed, he goes to the living room where a chicken commercial is playing for a local fast food joint. One of his employees comes to deliver money, but it's not all there. He finds out that one of his customers, a low-level pimp named Slick Charles, is evading him, and he must go find him. Meanwhile, Isaac is following Fountain looking for an opportunity to unalive him. Now Slick Charles is having an argument with one of his garden tool employees who says she's quitting. She sees Fountain as she's walking away and tells him where Charles is. Fountain enters Charles' room and demands his money. Charles is upset but eventually gives in. As Fountain is trying to leave, another car is blocking him. He realizes that Isaac has come to unalive him, so he gets out and takes shots only to be murdered. A few moments later, Fountain wakes up with a jolt looking for the bullet holes. It must have been a dream. Cut to the convenience store. Fountain grabs a 40-ounce, pays for it, asks for a lottery ticket that says "you lose," and gives some of his drink to Frog, who tells him his straighter is greater. Fountain ignores his words. He looks down the street and sees a man injured and stumbling. The man looks like him, but it is too far away to tell. A black SUV quickly comes by and kidnaps the man. Fountain goes home, cooks some food, looks at his brother's obituary, and goes to his mother's door to ask if she wants some. She once again thanks him, but says she's not hungry. Fountain looks at the pizza box and thinks that he hasn't collected the money from Slick Charles. Cut to Slick Charles' room, and there is an ad on television for a perm cream. One of Charles' garden tool employees is giving him a manicure when he hears a knock on the door. When he hears Fountain's voice, he freaks out. He eventually lets the man in. Fountain demands his money, but Charles is stunned that the man is alive. He explains to him how he was killed last night. At first, he doesn't believe him, but then he starts to slowly realize that Charles is telling the truth. Charles takes Fountain to see Yo-Yo, because she also saw him that night. Yo-Yo confirms the events, and she reluctantly joins them to find his killers. As they're looking for Isaac, Fountain sees the car that abducted the man in the street earlier, and they go into the house to investigate. Inside, they discover a secret elevator, and the three go down to investigate. Strapped up, the three emerge from the elevator only to find a scientist in a lab dancing and grooving to Michael Jackson. When he sees them, he stops in his tracks and then runs to escape. Fountain holds him at gunpoint and tells him to give him information. Wait, is this a white guy with kinky hair and a fro? You don't see that every day. Meanwhile, Yo-Yo and Charles take a look around, and Charles samples what he thinks is coke. When the lab tech steals a look to his left, Fountain follows his gaze. Yo-Yo and Slick Charles are now tweaking from things they have been exposed to in the lab. As Charles, who is already on edge from what he snorted, he fires a shot and kills the lab tech. The two run to Fountain, who is staring at himself in the body bag. By the way, this is the 2023 film They Cloned Tyrone. The three hightail it out of there and hide out at Yo-Yo's grandmother's house. Fountain is freaking out because he saw himself and wants to go back to investigate further, but Yo-Yo convinces him to spend the night to let things cool off. Fountain reluctantly agrees, But the next morning, we see Fountaine and his crew breaking into the house to find the lab. But the house now looks like a normal house. No break room, no elevator, no secret lab. Fountaine goes back to Yo-Yo's house and tells them what he didn't find. And they ask themselves, what would Nancy Drew do? Slick Charles suggests they get some food, as they can't think on an empty stomach. They decide to go to the chicken joint that was advertised on television. As they are discussing the facts and eating, they start laughing like idiots. Slick Charles comments on how he's never seen Fountaine laugh once in all the years he's known him. We then start to see that there is what appears to be a mass hysteria going on in the restaurant. Slick Charles begins to look around the restaurant concerned as he can sense that something very strange is going on. He then realizes that there is something terribly wrong with the chicken and throws it on the floor. Charles puts 2 and 2 together and realizes that the powder in the lab is in the chicken and is affecting them. Yo-Yo decides to seduce the manager to gather information, and once again, we see another white dude with a kinky afro. She convinces him to get her a large meal and starts rifling through his office, finds some powder, and listens to tapes that detail the effects of the chicken. And she sees a bank of surveillance cameras all around the Glen. She then makes an excuse to leave and tells the guys everything she found. They conclude that someone is doing experiments on the people in the Glen. When they see a van that is delivering powder to the restaurant, they decide to follow it. While driving, Yo-Yo sees a picture of Fontaine's brother Ronnie, and she compliments him. She then realizes that the boy is dead, and she feels guilty. Fountaine explains that a cop shot him using the excuse that he stole some candy. The van is delivering more product to a beauty supply store, and Yo-Yo and Fountaine go in to investigate. Meanwhile, Slick Charles sneaks into the van to see what else he can find. A woman getting her hair done is complaining about how she's being taken advantage of by the local government. But as more of the product is applied to her hair, she is dulled and doubts herself, saying that maybe she's the one in the wrong. Slick Charles then is shocked to see that the powder is also being put into beverages that are sold in the hood. On the inside, Fontaine's killer walks in and is shocked to see him alive. As they are arguing, Slick Charles is seen trapped in the van as it drives away. The two try to follow him, but realize that he left his phone in the car. Yo-Yo picks up some of the hair product and reads its catch line, "Straighter is greater," which Fountaine remembers Frog saying. The two go to see Frog to get any information they can out of him. Through coded messages, he sends them to a church. When they arrive, they find the van with Slick trapped inside. They let him out and he reveals that he found a keycard. The three then decide to go inside the church to see what they can find. We see that the very same grape drink that Slick Charles found in the van is being used for communion in the church. As the pastor is preaching, the atmosphere begins to resemble more of a club than a place of worship, and the three decide to come back after hours. As Fountaine decides to inspect the altar, he finds what looks like an access point where a keycard can be used. He asks Slick for the one that he found in the van, and a hidden elevator opens from under the altar. The three enter and emerge to find an underground base. After stealing through suits from unsuspecting workers, the three begin to explore. They find products that are being infused with the powder that they found, surveillance teams, and labs where psychological experiments are being done on residents of the Glen. After observing everything, the three begin to freak out as they begin to understand that the people in the Glen are being subjected to mind control and social engineering. Yo-Yo and Slick Charles want to expose everything, but Fountaine says that there's something that he's still looking for. He walks out, and once again sees a clone of himself being carted by, and decides to find out where the copies of him are coming from. They enter a huge lair with what looks like hundreds of holding tanks. Inside they find clones of not only Fountaine, but specific people in the Glen, like the pastor, other drug dealers, and even Slick Charles. They are all just pawns used over and over again in different communities. Fountaine starts to shoot one of the holding tanks, causing an alarm to go off. The three enter another elevator and return to the surface. They emerge in a strip club, and the DJ is revealed to be one of the underground operatives. He is told to stop the three from leaving and starts playing their mind control music to slow them down. Yo-Yo plugs her ears and tries to get the guys to do the same. Fountain has to drag Slick Charles out of the club. The DJ then sends all the club-goers after our three heroes to stop them. They steal a car and attempt to get away only to be chased by the large crowd from the club and bombarded by them. The crowd then suddenly stops in a zombified state. A car pulls up, and out comes a man in a black suit that is revealed to be a Fountain clone. But he is merely the driver. Then out steps Kiefer Motherclucking Sutherland, who appears to be in charge. His character's name is Nixon, and he admits that he even has a boss, and that he is more like mall security. He explains that underground they are doing quote-unquote research for the greater good, that they are trying to keep the United States united, because the Founding Fathers started an experiment that they couldn't see through successfully, and that in order to continue doing research without gentrification happening, they use different characters like drug dealers, preachers, and pimps to keep people away while they do experiments. He tells them they have two options: get killed, or just go back to their normal lives. Fountain then pulls a gun on him. Nixon then yells Olympia Black, and Fountain along with Slick Charles freeze in place, losing all motor function. When Yo-Yo threatens to shoot him, he commands Fountain to subdue her. He then commands Fountain to put the gun in his mouth, and to set the gun, he tells her to fall in line or he will have them all kill themselves. He then tells everyone to put their guns down and leaves. Cut to Fountain waking up again. As he makes a sandwich, there is a knock at his door. It's Yo-Yo. She wants to start strategizing their next move. But Fountain has given up telling her that this is not a community, that he's just a dope boy. She tells him that she has dreams too and that she's not going to let that place define her. Fountain goes back about his life in his crime-ridden neighborhood. Smoking weed and buying from the people he knows are exploiting him. He buys a lottery ticket and every option says, "You lose." He gives Frog a drink and looks visibly depressed. At home he loses it and throws his beer against the wall in frustration. His mother calls out to him from her room and asks if he is okay. He goes to his mother's door and tells her that he really needs to see her and talk to her. He begs her. Overcome by frustration, he kicks open the door and finds that his mother's voice is just a recording. Depressed, he breaks down as he realizes that he is all alone. He goes outside to grieve, and Junebug, his tiny informant from the beginning of the film, comes and sits with him. He shares his Capri Sun with him and the two begin to playfully water fight with one another, cheering up Fountain. Reinvigorated by the vestige of his brother, he goes to put the team back together. Yo-Yo is attempting to send a secret letter, but is kidnapped while doing so. And Fountain finds Slick Charles drinking himself into oblivion due to the trauma he's just experienced. They agree that Yo-Yo was right, and they need to fight. And they set off together to find her. They find another entrepreneurial lady of the night and get information from her on Yo-Yo's whereabouts. Cut to the inside of one of the padded cells in the underground base. Yo-Yo is being held captive. Nixon reveals that they found the report she had written that she was sending to media outlets, and tells her that it's good, but that she doesn't even know half of what's coming. He then tells her that they're going to experiment on her and to try not to lose her mind. Cut back to Fountain and Slick. They are trying to figure out a way to rescue Yo-Yo and bring the underground operation down. Slick suggests an idea that he says Fountain is going to hate. In the next scene, Fountain is speaking with Isaac, his killer. Isaac doesn't believe Fountain's story and once again kills him. Fountain's body is dumped on the side of the road and is once again picked up. Another clone of his is reanimated, and he wakes up. He goes to the store, gets a 40-ounce, buys a lottery ticket, and gives Frog some beer. He is then kidnapped by Slick Charles and another streetwalker. Inside of the underground facility, our original Fountain wakes up in a body bag. That mofo faked his death. They actually secretly paid and cooperated with Isaac to come up with a plan and script to fake Fountain's death. And while Fountain is infiltrating the underground base, Slick will be bringing the cavalry. Slick then leads the men to one of the secret entrances to the facility through a hood shop. Fountain then forces them to open all the surface doors. While Yo-Yo is being tortured with the mind control relaxer, everyone from the Glen, is infiltrating the secret facility. Fountain and Slick Charles find out where Yo-Yo is being kept, but she has managed to secure her own escape while the alarms are going off. They didn't realize she was wearing a wig. She and Slick reunite amid all the chaos. While the people from the Glen destroy the underground facility, Slick and Yo-Yo go to free all the clones. Fountain then comes face to face with one of his clones, and in mid-fight gets knocked out. He is drugged to an undisclosed location. We cut to Yo-Yo freeing clones, and Nixon starts shooting at her. She's trapped. He starts monologuing and explains that this is only one facility, out of dozens around the country. Fountain is then brought before the lead geneticist of the organization. He is the original. The geneticist Fountain explains that it's not enough for people to think the same. They need to be the same. And so they are slowly over generations transforming black and brown people into white people. Meanwhile, Nixon shoots Slick Charles, who is now unconscious on the ground. Geneticist Fountain tells him the unabridged version of what happened to their brother, that he had been shot and left for dead by police officers, that he could have survived, and that he was working toward a world where that would never happen again. Yo-Yo then surrenders to Nixon as she's petitioning to save his life. The real Slick Charles shoots Nixon, revealing that he had dressed up one of the clones as himself. Geneticist Fountain tells OG Fountain that he must die, but just before he is about to be murdered, he whispers, "Olympia Black," telling the Fountain clone to kill the geneticist. He then turns and leaves the room with the dead OG in the background. We cut to Channel 4 News reporting on the events of the clones escaping and the community coming together. The whole world is told what is going on with regard to the cloning and mind control operations around the country. In the uproar, Slick Charles and Yo-Yo joyfully reunite with Fountain. They each talk about retiring from their previous professions and going around the country liberating communities from this shadow organization. Fountain then wakes up suddenly again. Was it a dream? The radio says that it's Los Angeles. He gets ready, asks his mother if she wants any food, and heads out for the day. He gets a 40-ounce and scratch-off ticket and gives some of his beer to an old man. Lastly, we see him sitting with his friends smoking and watching the news. One of his crew looks surprised and says, "Tyrone, ain't that you?" To which Tyrone looks shocked. "I'm also a filmmaker. If you would like to support my channel and my work, you can purchase this bag with the link in the description. Great for a gift or for yourself."